I'm Austin Lugo.
I'm Andrew Harp.
This is With Nothing to Say.
Let's talk about Julien Donkey Boy.
Before we get into this week's film, next week we're going to be watching John Huston's Fat City, a boxing movie. I don't think we've done a boxing movie for the podcast before, although, as you and I have talked about before, and I think you are too, a huge fan of sports movies in general. There's just something
Yeah, I
about
mean,
a sports movie that, and I don't like sports. I know you're not a big sports guy yourself either, but sports
no, I don't
movies
watch it.
just,
Like I don't follow it
you don't
like
watch the
by game
sports.
basis. No, I don't watch sports.
No, I don't really get the appeal, but there's something about sports movies that just they make me so happy, and I'm very excited for. And plus John Huston. I mean, you really can never go wrong with John Huston. So
And I mean
I'm very
this novel
excited.
too, like I'm reading the novel it's based on. This is a very good
Yeah.
novel. This is probably like one of the better novels I've read so far this year by Leonard Gardner. It's very, very, very good. So just off the source material, it's like, I'm very interested to see what the movie is like. And I think it'll probably be good. Like,
Well, I'm very excited. But this week we watched something definitely of a different variety than Fat City, which is Julian Donkey Boy, and I started watching this movie by myself, but I was at Emily's parents' house, and so about 20 minutes in, Chuck wandered into the room, and then he started watching it. And then towards the end of the film, Emily and Shelley walked in and they watched it. Now Henry watched the whole thing. My son, he was awake the entire time. He had a great time with the film. So Henry's definitely giving this film a 10 out of 10. But
okay.
well, I mean, like Henry does not often stay up for long periods of time, so staying up for 90 minutes for him is very impressive.
That's awesome.
So I think he just loved the movement and the colors, and I don't know,
It's a good
just
looking
being a
movie.
baby. It's a good
Yeah.
looking movie. I will say that my family did not quite have that
Oh
reaction
no,
that
really? They
Henry
didn't
had.
care for it. Oh no.
They were not the biggest fans of the film. I think they found it a bit challenging uh, and not necessarily up their alley of what they consider a good movie. So it was a bit of a challenge. And it's always a challenge to watch a movie with people who come into the
You
movie
don't give a fuck.
deciding they don't like it.
Yeah.
But that's not any way to express my own opinions. I will say this year in general, yeah, I was looking back at the movies we've watched this year for the podcast, and we've watched a lot of challenging films for the podcast. I mean, I think I'm going to stand by that nothing's going to be as challenging as Anatomy of Hell was, because that was just
I
a
disagree,
brutal
but
film.
that's just me.
I know you disagree.
Not that you didn't
I
like
mean,
it. I mean,
we
we
have a whole
both liked it,
podcast.
but yeah,
No,
I
not
mean,
that I didn't like it at all. And
right.
that's not a.
Yeah.
I mean, it's supposed to be,
We
right?
we
It's
both can
supposed
agree
to
that we
feel
liked
like
it.
hell. And obviously, we have a whole podcast episode on it if you want to listen to our
Yeah,
full
just listen
opinions
to
of
that.
Anatomy of Hell. Just listen to that. That will give you a much better interpretation. But I did find this film. I mean, it's about a family, which, by the way, I didn't know Werner Herzog was in this. Uh,
Yeah.
he's great. Every
This is one of the most like considerable roles that I've seen him in. Obviously he plays himself
Yeah.
a lot in his movies, in his
Uh-huh.
documentaries and things like that. Obviously he has an amazing voice and amazing he kind of is playing himself in this movie, but in terms of like
100%.
playing a fiction but in terms of like playing a fictional character, this is maybe the most
Hmm.
have you ever seen the Jack Reacher movie starring Tom Cruise? Have you ever seen that
Yeah.
movie?
Yeah.
Werner Herzog, if you remember, he's like the villain in that movie or whatever.
Hmm.
So I think like besides that movie, this is like the movie where he plays like again like a fictional character. He's very good in it though, and he does a lot of like really funny things, like the scene where what he has to like pick up like it's like he has to like pick up an object while leaning down while standing on one foot, but I forget what the object was. It's like
He has to pick up a cigarette with his
a
mouth
cigarette.
while
You
standing
have to stand it
on
up
a piece
one
of
leg and leaning down.
glass. Yeah.
Yeah, that scene is amazing. It's a beautiful scene. Honestly, like I think this is like one of the most beautiful movies we've seen so far this year. I really think this is like one of the best. Like it's really fucking good. Um, and another movie that I watched like a few different Korean movies. Korean,
Yeah.
like he's like a guy I've been aware of for like a long time. And I've seen Spring Breakers. I watched that movie several years ago and it's a great film.
Hmm.
But he has like so
Great
many other
movie.
movies that like I barely like have gotten around to despite my knowing, despite my awareness of their reputation. I rewatched it recently and I watched it a while ago. His movie Kids. Have you ever seen Kids?
I have not.
He didn't direct it. He wrote it when he was like 18 or 19. And he's in the movie as well. He's like, and he plays a very funny role. That movie is like, that movie I find a little bit more shocking, a little bit more challenging than Julian Donkey Boy, just because like I think it goes a little bit too far, in its sequence of events. But it's a cool movie, and people always like bring up that movie a lot. Like it's a very famous, well regarded movie. It's kind of like a skating movie, kind of like
Oh,
there's a lot
okay.
of skating
Yeah.
in it. And Harmony Korine, like he comes from like a skating background. Like that was like a really big like part of like his young early life was like skating, the people that he met through it. And Korine,
Hmm.
he's actually from Nashville, Tennessee. I think he grew up there. But I think he like at a very young age he started like traveling.
Okay.
There's a good documentary about his like career a little bit. I
Hmm.
have my problems with it, but it's called it's like a Vice had this like documentary series about skaters called Epically Latered, and they did one on Harmony Cream because he was so influenced by skating. And he talks about being influenced by like early skate videos and then traveling very early on to New York City and also like San Francisco and hanging out with different skaters and filming stuff and doing things. And I think he talks about how like his first film, I think it might have been in Nashville, but I could be wrong. A a teacher like helped him get like a grant from the city to like film and create his like first film or something like that he ever made when he was like a teenager or
Wow.
something
Yeah.
like so very early talent. And the people talk the most about with Harmony Korine, like the movie is Gummo, which came out after
Hmm.
Kids and I think before Julian Donkey Boy. But honestly, I saw Gummo for the first time the other day. I would say that like Gummo and Julian Donkey Boy for me are about the same in quality. Like they're both really great. Even though I think Julian Donkey Boy, to me, seems like no one discusses it, no one talks about it, and Gummo is always brought up a lot and discussed a lot. Like in that documentary
Yeah.
I mentioned about Kareen, they bring up Gummo, but they only mention Julian Donkey Boy like once in name. But honestly, like I think they're both comparable in quality. I think they're both great. You should watch Gummo though.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the reasons I love Julian Donkey Boy as a film is it's really just the holistic filmmaker of just taking all these different techniques and ideas
Yeah,
and throwing them. I mean, not just the
it's like
use of
collage together.
it is. It feels very what's that called? Like multimedia-esque. And I mean in the
Yeah,
way it's using obviously it's shot on what looks to be like a camcorder. I mean it's super grainy, super saturated, and we're using a couple of different types of cameras here, right? Working with a lot of different like digital cameras and just a lot of different filmmaking techniques, like almost as if he's just seeing like what he can do, and it creates this very, which is obviously purposeful. I mean, it's about a family of uh, perhaps not the most mentally stable human beings. Of course, one of them is schizophrenic, and there is this very
yeah,
schizophrenic feeling to the film. I mean, you
yeah.
are, even though you're not necessarily from the POV of the schizophrenic, because it's really more about the whole family than any one particular person. But you definitely feel as if you are, I mean, you kind of go crazy a little bit watching this film because you are just thrown into all these different situations, and not just the way the family interacts with each other, particularly Werner Herzog, the way he treats his children isn't great. Uh, or just like watching Werner Herzog get high on what, like Robitussin. I think that's what he's doing.
Yeah, he like drinks it, or I love when he drinks it out of a sandal. That's one of the funniest. That is clearly like that's probably improvisation, right? That's probably
That's 100%.
improvisational where he's like
100%.
drinks it
That's
and
just
it
Werner
but like
Herzog being Werner
he
Herzog.
like it's a beautiful it's a beautiful shot and scene though because he attempts to drink out of it but then it like spills out
Hmm.
of the sides. Like he
Yeah.
doesn't even he's isn't even he isn't able to get it into his mouth through his sandal.
Not at
That's a
all.
beautiful scene.
I mean, everything with Werner Herzog, because he does the Werner Herzog thing, right? I mean,
Yeah.
written or not, improvised or not, he's doing the whole, you know, philosophizing about life, and but then also like kind of being absolutely insane
Yeah, he likes
simultaneously.
insanity. Yeah, I think like the Werner Herzog character kind of like is like a um yeah, I don't know. The Werner Herzog character, it's like it enjoys chaos, I guess, or like revels in it, or like is aware of the fact that like the world is chaotic and there's really nothing you can do about it. So that's kind of like what's going on with this character. One of the big differences between Julian Donkey Boy and Gummo, they're both very similar, but
Right.
Gummo has like a lot of different characters in a lot of different places. You're
Mhm.
basically in a podunk town in Ohio. It's like very like supposedly influenced from his experiences like of people that he met in like Nashville, Tennessee. So it's like
Mhm.
rednecks and stuff like that, like a lot of like poverty, kids acting crazy, acting how kids don't normally act. Very and it jumps around a lot to like all these like different like kids and people, and some eventually there's some parts where they clash or whatever. And but Julian Donkey Boy is pretty focused on just kind of like this one family, especially on Julian, probably the most. Like
Yeah.
you see Julian, going around a lot and going around town, and it looks like he hangs out with like a group or something like that. Like it, that's you know what I mean? Like it seems like he hangs out with like his like it appears to be some kind of like workshop or group that he works with of like different people who have maybe disabilities or something like that. And
Oh, yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like a collection. It's like a almost like a therapy group of people
Yeah.
with different mental or physical illnesses, right? There's a couple of blind people, deaf people, people with like kind of on the spectrum in varying
Yeah.
degrees. That yeah, like that bowling scene is a great scene. I love that scene where
I
they're
like
just
that scene
kind
a
of
lot
like
too.
hanging out. And I think that's
And the,
no, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
no, keep going, keep going. No, you're good.
Okay. I think one of the things that my family found challenging about this film is it's not to say that there isn't a plot. I don't think that that's an accurate description of this. I mean, we've watched
Hmm.
movies without plots before, and I don't think that
Yes.
that's an accurate description of this. I think rather this film sort of has this very subjective perspective in which we are jumping from scene to scene, and there's not necessarily that connective tissue of establishing a location, and here's the thing that's happening, and here are these people, and this thing is going to bring us to the next thing, right? There's no big MacGuffin that we're trying to fulfill in this piece, and it feels much more like real life, right? It feels like, I mean, there's no, as much as we want to, there's no real purpose, right? Things just kind of happen, and there's not really a logic or reason. Kind of the world is chaos, and it feels. I've talked about this with a couple of films before, but like the way this film feels like a memory, in the sense that we're just capturing moments of life, and there's no like reason that we capture this moment and don't capture that moment, right? That's the weird thing about
Yeah,
memory
yeah.
is like it's not necessarily, and that's what's great about this film is it's not necessarily we're capturing the best moments, right? We're capturing the moments that need to happen, but rather
Yeah.
they're for whatever reason, like they just become memorable. And sometimes, right, it's a weird moment, like Werner Herzog standing on a glass cup trying to pick up a cigarette with his mouth, and then sometimes it's just like
Yeah.
people going bowling, and there's right? The connection isn't as simple as just, well, this happened, therefore that happened, that happened. And I think
Hmm.
that's where my family struggled with the piece is they're looking for that the whole time, right? They're looking for like,
Right. Yeah.
well, wait a minute, like this scene happened. Why isn't like, how is this lead into the next thing? How does that lead into the
Yeah.
next thing? And I
Yeah.
think it definitely helps this film that it is contained to so few locations and
Mhm.
uh, just a few characters, right? It's really just the family at the end of the day. I mean, obviously he goes out with that group and there's a couple other scenes, but I would argue a majority of this film is about the family, and I think that's good. I think it works that it's contained because there there's definitely this sort of Werner Herzog abusiveness that comes
Yeah,
from a
especially
sense.
yeah. Those parts are, like when he abuses his wrestling brother.
Yeah. And it's right. And I think part of it comes from a sense of like isolation, right? He's
Mhm.
isolated this family from the rest of the world. And, he creates these expectations, right? There's that scene where he's spraying down, I think it's the wrestling son, right, with the hose and telling him not to,
Yeah.
right, to not flinch from it, from the like the freezing cold water. And that
I,
scene goes on
that was
for,
Julian though. Yeah, that's
is it
Julian, right?
Julian?
He's like spring.
Okay.
Yeah, he's spraying
I
water
didn't know
on
if it was
Julian. That
Julian or
scene,
the brother.
that scene, like it feels like it goes on forever.
It goes on for a long time. Like that scene is intense because it's just brutal, right? He just keeps going,
Yeah,
and he's
he's abusing
just
him. Yeah,
he's just so mean.
yeah.
It's like it's
You,
just
you,
so
you
mean
know,
in this movie.
y- it's funny that you brought up plot, like the word plot, because like I read like this interview that author Blake Butler did with Kareen like several years ago about his
Mhm.
book. He came out with a book like several decades ago, called A Crack Up at the Race Riots. And it was being reissued. And I read it recently, and it's a good book. It's a good extension of his movies. It's very similar to his movies, kind of like this collage, hodgepodge of a bunch of different things. It's very good, very funny.
Right.
And Blake Butler, he asked um what is plot to you? And Kareen says, and it's like a short answer, the idea of a plot is unattractive because I never liked people who plotted out their lives. I don't like people who plot too much. I try to stay away from people who plot. But a story can be more liquid. It can be without a point. It can be more impressionistic. So the book is a story, but I don't think the book is a plot. And that pretty much, you can pretty much, take that, right, where he's talking
Yeah.
about his book and put it on his movies. Like the books, the movies, they're impressionistic. They don't have a plot, but they do have stories in them. Like that's
Hmm.
there's no doubt about that.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, it fulfills the fundamental idea of what a film needs to be, which is like a film is a series of scenes in which, right, there's someone that wants something, and then they attempt to get that thing. And the collection of scenes don't necessarily, right, they do need to create an impressionistic, they need to create a feeling, an
Yeah.
emotion, but it's not necessarily like from scene to scene there needs to be this sort of this pushing moment, but rather that like each
Yeah.
scene is creating a feeling. And I think we do that, right? You can grab any scene from
Hmm.
this, and it follows the more traditional or like idea of what a
Hmm.
story is or a plot, where like go again or going to the scene where the wrestling son is wrestling the trash can, right? There's a very like
Yeah,
real
great
idea of what
scene.
he's trying to do, right? He's
Or when they
he
wrestle
wants to
each
be
other, I
great.
love that scene when they wrestle each other and
Oh
like he gets
God.
like pissed off at his brother. Oh, that felt really good. That because it's just so like I don't know, there's something so like specific about it.
Yeah, and it feels very, I don't want to use real because maybe it feels very personal, I guess, almost in a certain sense. I
Yeah.
mean, I remember, right? I
It's
remember
like you're
growing up,
there.
right? You're there with him, you're watching, and I remember like being a kid, and I hated like all of my male cousins. They're very like physical, right? Still are very physical, right? They love to wrestle, they love to box, they love to play football, that sort
Yeah,
of thing. And if you've ever listened to this podcast before, that's not necessarily my cup of tea, right? Not something I'm
sure.
really into. But I remember as a kid, like that is like a way I had to engage with them, like whether it was my choice or not. And there's something very real about like that whole whole situation and kind of like the back and forth and
Yeah.
in the way like and just talking about like the performance is just so intense and touching, right? Like
Yeah.
Julian, uh, gosh, it is just kind of breaks your heart, and like you can just see
Yeah.
right the kind of like these big moments, and like the wrestling is kind of the culmination of his relationship with his brother, right? It's this idea of like
Mhm.
he wants
There's like
he
barely
really
relationship.
wants
Yeah.
like he loves his brother, and he
Yeah.
genuinely wants to do like what he thinks is right for his brother. And there's this very real like, which is like interesting, the comparison between Julian and his brother, because
Hmm.
they both, at the end of the day, right, what they both want is to impress their father, right? To say like,
I
we've
think so.
achieved greatness, we've done this thing, right? You can be proud of us now. and you can have this pride in us. And the failure of each is like for Julian, he's just completely unaware of how to do it, like, right? He's kind of unaware of the social norms and what you're supposed to do, right? He's unaware of that, and so he's
Yeah.
coming into this, right, kind of playing it up, being a little silly, and then on the opposite end, right, his brother, he's aware of what he
He's
needs
trying to
to
get him to
do.
take he's trying to get him to take it seriously, and he's getting like really frustrated with Julian that he's not like taking this
Hmm.
like very silly thing where they wrestle in the living room
Like
or
it's a
whatever. You know,
ridiculous
it's like
thing, right? He's like, take it
yeah,
seriously, take it seriously,
yeah.
and yeah, I mean, the right, the culmination of that scene where the brother, like, he's like fuck off and like leaves the house, and Julian runs after him, like that is like one of the greatest moments, is like him, Julian, apologizing and like unaware that
Yeah.
like even at that moment he's unaware of like that he's done it, and he really hasn't done anything wrong, right? Like the weird thing about
Julian?
Julian is,
Yeah.
yeah, like when Julian goes out and apologizes, right? But like in a way Julian's kind of more aware than anyone, right? It's like, yeah, he's
Mhm.
schizophrenic and maybe like quote unquote crazy, but in a sense, like he's kind of the only one who has any sort of like awareness of the actual world, of like how
He
things
does
work.
kill a
Or
kid at the beginning of the movie.
yeah, that, I mean, that's not great,
And he
which is
did have an
very
incest
intimidating.
baby.
And
He
he has
does
an
have an
incest.
incest
Well,
baby.
yeah, that, and then that I mean that final scene is
You
definitely
know, you
as a,
know, that
yeah,
movie, you know, if you're watching the movie from beginning to end, it's more plotted out than I think people think. You know what I mean? Than you would like, you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
because like I don't know, there's something kind of like interesting to think about like the beginning of the movie where he kills a kid and then the end of the
Hmm.
movie where he's like cradling his dead baby.
Hmm.
There's something kind of like connected. You know what I mean? I feel like it kind of like comes full circle in a way.
There's
Um,
100% a circularness to the film, right? This idea of creating death and then trying to uh,
yeah,
resurrect, right? Um, because like the death at the beginning is something that he 100% creates, right? And then there's this kind of karmic reaction to it at the end. I mean, that is just such
yeah,
those last moments, which is not what I expected, and it really pulls in like because of course the opening of the film, the opening credits, and throughout the film, right, you have these shots of not the ballerina, but the ice skater, and
yeah.
and throughout the
That's yeah,
film,
I
you're
like that
trying to
shit.
connect. You're like, it's beautiful, but I'm not exactly sure like what this has to do with the rest of the film. Right, you're trying to connect it, you're trying to find
Hmm.
it there, and then you have the ice skating scene at the end of the
Well,
film.
and I guess like also the footage is the footage that Werner Herzog and his armless friend are watching too.
Mm-hmm.
Remember? Yeah, like his armless
Yeah.
friend, which is very Korean, like kind of having kind of like these random people, kind of unusual people, you know, kind of there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something about, right, like there's almost this violence of ice skating. Like
Hmm.
it's almost a violent, even though you're not like hitting anyone, there's something like very violent about like just the idea of, the sharp skates and the jumping
Hmm.
and kind of the movements of it. Like it's both beautiful and in a weird way it's violent. And cutting it back to that, like, and thinking of those, that moment where she falls, right, is just
Hmm.
so
Chloe Sevigny
uh
character, yeah.
it's
You see it
very,
coming too.
you see it coming. You do. Uh, I mean, like the moment she's on the ice, you're like, oh, like you can see like, right, the way that she's moving and the things that are happening. Uh, it's very hard to watch no matter what. But as someone who just had a kid, it was very, very hard to watch. Like that scene was very tough for me in a way that a film hasn't been in a long time. And I think there is something, because it was, because the thing that was so personal about it is like, right, like when we went to the hospital when Emily was about to give birth, is like Henry was stuck, right? He was stuck in her hip, and she had, and basically like Henry was like suffocating, right? So like they had to like, do an emergency C-section, and when they pulled him out, like his oxygen level was not doing great, and so like those first couple of
Hmm.
minutes were very, very scary, right? Um, and so
Hmm.
like to kind of be brought back to that moment in a very visceral way, uh, is incredible. And I think that's, that's what makes filmmaking like so magical and amazing and wonderful. And obviously like it's not a moment you revel in, hopefully, but it's very powerful. And thinking of that just last moment, right, where he's under the covers and he's cradling the dead baby, like that is such a intense way to end the film. But every
I
moment of
also
the
like the
film,
part. I also like the
like
part of the
that.
movie where that Hasidic kid is trying to sell. Oh no, Julian is trying to sell like these like homemade like shitty looking ice skates to like the Hasidic kid. It's like for some reason that is like the moment that leads up to like her having like the miscarriage or whatever. Like it's just
Yeah.
crazy. That part is like crazy as fuck. And yeah, yeah, like the Hasidic kid, the armless guy, like I just feel like there's so many like weird like little tiny little like people like that, like that just kind of show
Mhm.
up and appear. Um and yeah, that scene is pretty bad. It is the incest baby, of course. But I'm not saying that
Yeah.
uh which the I find it the incest thing to be very interesting because normally, and
Mhm.
obviously, incest is not good. It's not.
Andrew does
Normally,
not condone it.
I don't condone it. Normally, like a movie that has like incest in it as like a subject matter would maybe have like something kind of like in the movie about how the man who, was like abusive and, was a horrible, horrific rapist and didn't care. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And the girl, the woman, was abused or horrifically hurt in some kind of way. This movie almost kind of like takes like a neutral stance on it. It doesn't appear as though like the Chloe Savini character is all that traumatized over the fact that like she is going to have her brother's kid. um you know what I mean, like, and
Yeah.
it's also it, there's a I'm unsure whether or not the rest of the family is aware of that as well. It's hard to know that, so it takes like an interesting stance on it where like there's not really any kind of like demonization going on with this, like the incest thing, you know what I mean, like there's no like the Chloe Savini character, it seems relatively like fine, like there
Hmm.
doesn't appear to be any kind of like, as at least as what we can see, there doesn't appear to be
Right.
any kind of like horrific like trauma. She doesn't get upset. She like interacts with him as if like there's nothing wrong, throughout the movie while she's pregnant.
Hmm.
I just find that very interesting how it, again, most movies, most media would take like a hardline stance, like this is disgusting and awful. And I mean, I pretty much, I agree with that, right? Like that's,
Yeah.
but I do find that, but I think it's more interesting in this movie how it kind of just has like this neutral, like whatever, like kind of perspective on it. It's very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. The way the whole, I mean, I think what's even stranger is it's not that it's ignored, but there's not really like, I mean, as you say, like in most films, this would be the antipathy, right? This would be the
Yeah.
epitome of the film, right? This would be you'd see the big scene, right, where this event happens and he
Yeah.
impregnates her, or however that, right? That would be the crux
Or it's
of the film,
revealed, or yeah, yeah.
right? Like it's revealed, like, oh, like this is an incest baby and all that. And in this film, it's almost just like this is a thing that's happened, and it's not. I mean, not only is it like neutral, in that it's like it's not demonizing it, it's not saying like it's a good or a bad thing, but it's almost you can't tell like does the family like know and just not care, or like why aren't they reacting to this? Why aren't they angry by this? Why is there it's like
Yeah.
to the film like it's just a thing that's there, right? It's just like one of the things
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
there,
if
and
they're
it is
aware of it,
not
I
like,
don't know. I mean,
and that's also like like it's obviously as a viewer, right? We figure it out. We put the pieces together. There's not right. You
yeah,
can.
they kind of when she goes to that scene is funny when she goes to the doctor and like they ask like who's the father and she's like father like with a question mark, like it's like maybe she's deluded in thinking, maybe it's like an immaculate conception thing, right? There is like kind of like a religion thing going
100%.
on, right? When they go to like the break, when they go to the church with like the sermon and stuff like that. Like the God,
Hmm.
that's a great scene. So, but there's no discussion of that. There's no discussion of whether or not like I don't know. There's just you're right. Like there's no like discussion about incest. The word incest doesn't come up. There's nothing like that.
Mm. And it's also, or at least it was unclear to me, like if that relationship was consensual or non-consensual. I mean, even if like
That's what
you
I'm
could
saying. Like
argue,
I don't.
could
We don't know.
right? Could Julian even have a consensual relationship? I mean, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Does he have the mental capacity to right like be able to have like to think like right this
Yeah.
thing is creating that thing? It's unclear, right?
I think he
Because I
knows
mean
that
the
it's his
whole
baby, right? He gets very
I mean
upset
he
at the
knows it's
end.
right. He knows that it's his baby. Hence
Yeah.
his reaction at the end with the baby. And I
Yeah.
was thinking about that scene right after he kills the kid at the beginning of the film.
Yeah.
Just a really like it's just a really cool scene because and also like their use of
Mhm.
stills in this film. I
Yeah.
absolutely love. Like
Or
throughout the
or
film,
like
they'll
they'll
have the
use yeah.
yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say like yeah, like they use the stills. They also use like kind of like that crunchy audio of like Werner Herzog
Hmm.
occasionally. Like you say, like I just think that like yeah, the use of all these different things is amazing.
Yeah, I think the use of I'm I've become very fascinated recently with the use particularly of kind of multimedia film, which is basically
Sure.
just like utilizing different types of medias in film, like
Hmm.
more than just kind of the moving image, right? Using stills, using different types of audio, using different types of cameras, because it's kind of like saying like I think we have created and even in the movies that we love and we watch, right, there's this very specific idea of like, here's what a movie is. Here's kind of the things you have to do, right, in that box, in that realm of like what a movie needs to be. And to remember that, like, oh yeah, all a movie has to be at the end of the day is just like sound and images. And however you get that
Hmm.
across, right, I think we've created these limitations, right? You can't use stills, you can't kind of like play with sound, you can't use different right? Everything needs to look the same. It all needs to look
Hmm.
desaturated. I mean, just thinking about like just talking about the color grading of this film and like how some scenes are like super red
Yeah.
or like super green, right? Super saturated or super
Yeah.
unsaturated, and jumping from scene to scene, and there's not that consistency. And
Hmm.
an established filmmaker would say, well, that's right. That's wrong. You're not supposed to do that. Like it's supposed to be consistent throughout the film, and you're supposed to have these specific things. And to realize that you don't really need any of that. Like none of that matters, right? At the end of the day, is just like how are you, what best is going to get the story across? And I think we kind of get lost in that a lot. And then this is kind of a conversation that I have. Um, it's a conversation I have. Like I'm producing a feature right now that we're shooting in the fall, and one of the conversations is like at the end of the day, what's best for the story? Like who cares if we have 5 people on set or 20 people on set? Who cares if we have
Hmm.
this giant cast or this tiny cast? The only
Yeah.
thing that matters is what's going to tell the best story, right? It doesn't. None of that stuff matters. Like it's cool to
Yeah.
have and it's fun to have, but you as an artist, you always have to ask yourself, like, what is best to get the story across? And maybe it isn't, right? Maybe it isn't a simple, just like moving image and looking really pretty. I think that's where I often get like frustrated when I'm talking to other people who, kind of like film bros, right? People who love movies, is they get so caught up in this idea of the beautiful image that they kind of miss like, well, like what's the point of that beautiful image? Like just because an image is beautiful doesn't mean it's a good film. There's plenty of of bad films, right? That look pretty. Like that is not what distinguishes a good film from a bad film. It's a question of like how is this propelling the story, right? How is this image propelling the story? And if like you want to create a sense of like kind of ugliness or like just like hurt, I would not describe this film as an ugly film at all. But right, like the image is only there to tell the story and however you need to do that. So it doesn't really matter like what kind of media you're using. And that can be challenging, right? I think this film is um I found it definitely challenging at times to watch. I mean, it's just like so hectic, like
Yeah.
what, hour and 40 minutes, right? Like you're just tossed
Yeah. I
around like a
think
ragdoll. I mean,
I,
yeah.
I think the scene that like sums up the movie the best is like one of my favorite scene maybe is like when they're having dinner and Julian is like, "Hey, can I read a poem to you guys?" And they're like, okay. And he's like, okay. And he's like, morning chaos, noon chaos, evening chaos, eternity chaos, morning chaos, noon chaos, eternity chaos. He just like keeps repeating that like eternity chaos, morning chaos, evening chaos. He's like trying to express himself, and then his dad like
Mhm.
kind of cuts him off and is like, he says it's like artsy fartsy or whatever, and then he proceeds to talk about the ending of Dirty Harry. He proceeds to like describe what happens at the end of the movie Dirty Harry. I think that scene like sums up the movie because it's like Julian in that moment is trying to express himself, right? Like he
Mhm.
really feels that way, like Eternity Chaos. And his dad like cuts him off and he belittles him, and he basically just says like you're stupid, or that you're like you are being pretentious or whatever, even though it's like the opposite. Like I think he says like it doesn't even rhyme or whatever. It's like it's not the point, he's trying to express himself. And
Yeah.
and he cuts him off, and then he goes on like some kind of like superfluous, diatribe about like, the movie Dirty Harry or whatever. I just love how that like that I feel like that scene kind of like sums up like the whole of the movie basically.
No, I mean, I completely agree, right? The idea that there are these children, all the children, are trying to find ways to express themselves, not only to impress their father, but like to be themselves and to like, this is who I am as a human being. And the irony of the piece, right? The dramatic irony, perhaps even, is that Werner Herzog simultaneously wants his children to be great, right? To do great things. But then he is the very thing that stands in their way, right? He's the thing that stops them, right? I mean, like that poem and him going on about it being like artsy fartsy, and how a
Yeah.
real poem has rhyme and blah 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 blah. But it's like
Hmm.
your insistence on them fitting to being this certain thing, to being this certain way, is the very thing that's kind of destroyed
Hmm.
them, right? It's the very thing that has broken them, and they can't
Uh-huh.
ever escape that, right? I mean, they all live in this house together, uh, and
Yeah, and
they're
the mom, the absence of the mom, right, is something that was also brought up by the dad a lot, right?
Mhm.
About her being dead.
Which, yeah, she died. Do we ever like? Which I don't think. At least I maybe I missed it. We don't really ever know how she died or like
Yeah, I
any
mean,
real
like, I don't know.
timeline.
We don't know what she looks like. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, I think it's just the fact
Mm-mm.
that she like died not too long ago. And everybody's kind of broken up about it. I think, especially the dad.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah. Like I think that in many ways defines Werner Herzog's character is kind of like there's a sense of grief, right, in everything
Oh
that he
yeah, he
does,
remember the
and
scene. Remember he asks his son to wear his wife's
to wear the
dress.
dress.
That's a great scene.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy scene.
Yeah, I mean he's trying to, which I imagine has to be a very specific and challenging thing, is like to relieve the grief of like losing this person that you've loved your entire life, right? Someone you've loved very dearly, you've had children with, and then right, you create life, you create human beings, uh, who are are the receptacles of like all of your love and care, and then you're the person you marry, you have kids with,
Yeah,
you love to death dies, and now you can see, right? You can see a part of her in all of them, and so I think this
yeah.
film has a
You
lot
look
to
like her.
say about grief, right? Right? Like I mean, that moment is just so it's so intense because like he's trying to get over his grief, and obviously it's not going great, but he is that inability to get over his own grief is the same reason right, it's the reason he's unable to connect with his kids and has this sort of abusive relationship with his own children. And the irony is like if he could let go of that, if he could let go of that grief, then he connect with his
Yeah,
children, and then like
but
he
it's
would be
like,
okay, right? He would be happy.
yeah, but like it's so like I see where you're coming from, Austin, about like this discussion about like, oh, if they just do this or that, then it'll be okay. I think like for me, like a movie like this is just it to me, this movie is just all about the fact that like everything is fucked up and there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do to change it. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing that like you're being very idealistic to say like, oh yeah, if only he, does this and this
Mm.
and that. No, everything is ruined. Like everything is like fucked up. Everybody is fucked up. Everybody will forever have like think about their past and their trauma. No one will get over anything. Everybody's just gonna hurt each other. Like that's what the movie's about. Like the movie's like about like that failure. For again, I'd like you discussed, that failure to like to connect or to find anything going on to you know find an alternative. So I mean, like I see where you're coming from, like trying to like surmise and think about like, oh, if it wasn't like this or that. It's like, no, that's the thing. It will always be like this, and there's nothing that is going to happen or change, or no one's going to get over anything. Like no one ever really gets over anything. So it's just that's just the fact of the matter. And that movie, I think this movie in particular is being very honest about that, which is why it's so good. The fact that
Mm.
like like this shit is forever. Like eternity chaos, noon chaos, evening chaos, morning chaos.
Obviously, chaos exists. And, speaking in the world of this film, right? Let's not try to like externalize it to like, oh, well, like this is what the real world is like, because it's um, never really externalized. So in the world of this film, like chaos exists and it's gonna happen no matter what you do. But I don't know, the like I know the ending is obviously like kind of heartbreaking and sad, but I think there's something hopeful in the fact that despite all of the chaos and despite the death of his child, like there is this real sense of love. And maybe like it does, maybe like you could argue, okay, well it doesn't matter, right? They loved his kid because his kid's dead, right? Like it doesn't
Oh
matter.
no, I
Um,
agree with you about the ending. Yeah. Yeah. He
yeah.
loves his kid.
And
He was like this
and
precious kind of pure thing, right?
yeah, right. Like uh, it's the only non-sinner, right? It's the only thing that hasn't sinned. It's done no wrong in this world. It's made no decisions of its own. And I think there's this. I think their failure is their inability to embrace the chaos, like to accept that the world is chaos and it's going to be chaos. And I think like Werner Herzog's failure is like his refusal to accept chaos, right? His
Yeah.
incessant need to kind of control things, his incessant need to like, if I can just, right, if I can just get my son to do this thing, if I can just get my kids to do this thing, then everything's going to be all right, right? But the fact is like you can't, like the world is chaos. And the only solution to that, right? The only solution to like if the world's chaos is to embrace it and to accept that the world is chaos and kind of be there with it. And that's right, that's kind of like the growth of Julien is like he embraces that chaos. He embraces that like the world is chaotic and it doesn't make sense. And it's not supposed to make sense. And yet, like, it's going to happen either way, like if you want to or not. And you can fight that chaos like Werner Herzog does, right? You can try to create this order. But at the end of the day, like it's still going to be chaos, and there's nothing you can do about it. People are going to die for no reason, and people are going to have incest babies, and all of these things are going to happen, and you can't control it. And all you can do is kind of be there in the moment. And yeah, the movie I was thinking about while watching this is a movie we watched for podcasts a couple of years ago now. I was thinking about Seeds, uh,
Oh yeah, I love seeds.
Andy Milligan film.
Yeah.
Just like in the sense that like right, it's almost all in one location,
Yeah.
kind of that like family drama. Maybe not as incestual, definitely not as like sexy. Sexy is probably not the right word to describe Seeds. I don't know if erotic's necessarily the right word either, but lustful maybe. I'm not exactly sure the right word to describe
Yeah,
Seeds.
there's
You'll
kind
have
of
to listen
like
to
a
the
there's kind
podcast.
of
It's very
well,
smooth,
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah. Like Seeds is like like it's like it's a very artsy movie, but it's like it's like a it's at the end of the day, it's like it was like a movie that's made to be played like in a porno theater, like in New York City, right?
yeah,
In like the 60s or 70s or something like that. Like kind of like it's a nasty, disgusting film.
yeah, yeah. And not that this film is necessarily like it'd be a little weird if you played into a porno theater, but there's
No,
definitely
it's like
like
not
that.
that at all.
No, but there's definitely that kind of like familiar. I just think it has like a
Hmm.
spiritual relationship with this film, and there's something really um,
That's what you mean. Yeah.
interesting about kind of like the watching these two films back to back and kind of like connecting those films and kind of seeing the way that they handle, I mean, just like films about family drama, I guess at the end of the day, right? And just kind of like the chaos of it. Because they're both like
Hmm.
very like chaotic, challenging films that they're kind of just throw you in a
Yeah.
hundred different directions.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's a good comparison. Yeah, C's is definitely more it definitely revels a lot in violence and stuff like that. Julian Donkey Boy is more like I said impressionistic, I think
Mhm.
in its filmmaking and stuff like that, how it just sort of takes all these moments and stuff. Actually, on the Wikipedia page I was reading about it, the way that it looks, the movie looks it looks amazing. It's so I guess it was shot on mini DV tape, and then it was transferred to 16 millimeter film, and then it was blown up to 35 millimeter film for the master print. So that's why it looks so like low definition and grainy. It's like filmed
Yeah.
on tape and then basically like transferred to the film. Um, yeah, I love the way that the film looks. I love that scene, and it's on the poster of the movie, but the scene of like Chloe Sevigny, she's like walking through some kind of like field, and she's like singing like a song, like
Mhm.
a Christian song, and like the way that the light hits her hair, it looks like she has like a halo, you know,
Yeah.
which I think adds to, I guess, like the religious fascination, kind of immaculate conception, kind of purity thing going on too in the movie. I love that part.
Hmm.
And it's not related to anything in particular. It's just her walking. She doesn't You don't know where she is. She doesn't run into anyone. She's just walking and singing, but it's like yes, like it's so perfect. It's so perfect.
Yeah. Uh, I love that it's shot. I mean, it makes sense that it was shot on DVD because it has like that kind of camcorder kind of feel to it. Because it has there's a specific
Yeah.
grain, especially to early digital, that is very different than the digital now. Like if you shoot something on
Yeah.
digital now, it just has a
Yeah.
very different look.
Have, have
Um,
you ever seen Inland Empire yet? Have you watched that yet?
I mean, I've seen
Oh,
clips
okay.
from it, so like I know what I know
Whoa.
like kind of the
Yeah, it's like that. It's like a that digital, early digital, like kind of grain to it. It really kind of adds to the like how like gross it is. I think it's filmed on it's what the fuck is mini DV tape? Is that digital or is it tape? It's
ooh,
a
I don't
tape.
know. It's
It's a
tape.
tape. Yeah, it's not digital,
Okay.
it's tape. Um yeah, mini DV tape, so like the tiny
Yeah, yeah,
tiny
yeah.
tapes. But I know what you mean, kind of like that, whether it's the films on like, tape or early digital, like with Inland Empire, it creates like a grainy effect that I think sort of like adds to kind of like the creepiness, but also the beauty of the films too. Like I said, I think the graininess sort of like adds a lot to like again like the scene of Chloe Sevigny walking in the field.
Yeah, I think there's something really important about sort of I tell this to Brandon because Brandon's been wanting to make this film for right. We wrote the script last summer, and he's kind of just been sitting on this idea for quite a while, and kind of go back and forth on it. But one of his big hesitations, he's like, "Well, I don't have $1 million to make this movie. I don't have a ton of money to make this movie, and so I'm not going to make it until I can make it perfect." And uh, if he doesn't want to make the movie, that's fine. I'm happy to write scripts with him because it's fun to write scripts with him, and it's a good challenge for me as a filmmaker, right? To kind of just create new stories, even if we don't do anything with them.
Yeah.
But like the important thing as a filmmaker is like you have to embrace your mistakes because like part of the filmmaking process, like the fact is like and I think this is what I think this is the magic of filmmaking and what differentiates it from like painting or writing a novel or writing a short story or kind of the other art forms is filmmaking is fundamentally imperfect. Like it can't by the very definition of it be perfect because you're limited. Fundamentally always going to be limited by resources, time, actors, right, weather, and because you can't have the perfection that you can have in a novel, right? You can spend your entire life working on a novel and perfecting every single word, but you can't have that in a film. You can never have that in a film. I mean, because there's a part of film that is reality, right? Because you're capturing the moving image, it's never going to be perfect. It's always going to be imperfect. And so you can spend your life trying to get the perfect image and never getting it, or you can embrace those imperfections and celebrate those imperfections. And again, right, talking about the idea of like what exactly is a film. And at the end of the day, it's just there to tell the story. And so, like,
Yeah.
you know, in this case, like the use of, I guess it's not digital, it's tape, but it has like that kind of digital look to it, right? Using that grain uh, to enhance the story instead of being like, well, we can't make this movie because we don't have, right? We're not shooting it on, beautiful 70 millimeter. Uh, Instead being like, no, no, we have like this type of thing. Let's embrace it. Let's utilize this for our story. And I think that that's filmmaking at its best. And I think that's what makes this film above and beyond so many other films is every film has mistakes. Even my favorite films of all time, there's mistakes in them. But what a great film does, that a good film doesn't do, is a great film's like, I know there's mistakes and I'm going to embrace them. I'm going to lean into them because they
Yeah.
exist. They're always going to exist. And so instead of saying, trying to hide them, right, trying to kind of put them in the background, it's putting them at the forefront and saying, like, yeah, like uh, this isn't perfect, right? It is imperfect, but so is life. Like, so are humans. Humans are fundamentally imperfect. And so that's what I love about Julian Donkey Boy is like it's the imperfection of it that makes it so perfect.
Yeah. Well, I don't even know what I would like change about it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what's imperfect about
Hmm.
it. Like, yeah, I
Yeah,
guess like it's a little ramshackle and lo-fi, but that's kind of the point, like
that's the point.
that's kind
Yeah.
of yeah, that's the point of the movie. Yeah, again, I guess you're saying like from like you're saying from the perspective of you can imagine like someone who has very little knowledge of movies or doesn't care about it would like watch this movie with no, lead up into it and just be like, this,
Hmm.
why is it grainy? Why
Yeah.
does it sound like this? Yeah, like criticisms like that. I see what you mean.
Well, that does put us at just about an hour. Should
Yeah, I
we
think
give
so.
some
Yeah.
final thoughts? Yeah. You want to
Yeah,
go
go ahead.
first? You want me to go first?
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Well, I feel like I a bit captured kind of the idea of what Julian Donkey Boy is and what I love about it is a movie of imperfections and embracing those imperfections and chaos is most definitely a movie about chaos. I mean, as you said, that dinner scene is the epitome of the film, right? The son trying to express himself and expressing that the world is
Mm,
chaos and it can't be stopped and there's nothing we can do about it. And the only thing we can do is embrace it. And I think that's a really beautiful message, even though there's like a lot of really challenging and hard and tough things about this film. Obviously,
mhm.
tough in different ways for different people who are in different phases of their life. Particularly, for me as someone who's only been a father for 4 months, definitely that final scene hits really hard and it's tough. Not that it wouldn't hit hard for everyone, of course it would, but it just has a different flair for me. And I am just like I said, I'm really interested in multimedia projects right now. I mean, I think part of it is
Yeah.
just because my own project is a right? The film More Beautiful Than Death that I've been working on nonstop for the past couple of years is a multimedia project. And so I'm really fascinated by the idea of how we can utilize non-traditional filmmaking. And when I say traditional filmmaking, I'm talking about 24 frames per second, right? Just putting cameras in places, nice lighting, blah, 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 blah. Like, how can we utilize non-traditional filmmaking to still tell great stories? Because I think that is the future of cinema. I legitimately think that. Like, I think we need to kind of embrace utilizing because we're at a moment in time where we can embrace all these different formats, and we're not doing it. And I think we can be. I think we're kind of losing a bit by not embracing all these different forms of art. I think the great thing about filmmaking is it is sort of a conglomerate, right? It's an aggregate of all the different arts that we have created over the centuries, right? Painting and writing and
Mhm.
music and right, it's just all these different things kind of mashed together, and that's kind of the magic of cinema, and that's what Julian Donkey Boy is doing here. It's kind of mashing all these different kind of things, still photographs and sound design and beautiful music and dancing and ballet and ice skating and all, and just
Yeah.
kind of like combining them into this one thing and philosophy, right? Just all these different things and kind of just mashing them together. And of course, like, how can you complain about Werner Herzog? Like, that's always going to be a good time. Uh, I'm never going to see Werner Herzog and not get excited about that experience. So I'm going to sit on a very strong 9 out of 10.
Really? Wow. You really feel that strongly? I would give it like more like
Yeah.
an 8, but I feel you. Yeah, it's kind of funny you were talking about yeah, like utilizing different like formats and things and stuff like that. Like because like Korean like lately has been like kind of like going off. He made a movie that came out a few years ago called Aggro Drift, which is a movie that's filmed entirely in what is it? It's filmed entirely in infrared photography. So he and he's done like interviews recently where he's kind of like gone on and on and on about like how much he loves like video games and stuff like that. He released a film
Okay.
recently that has like uh it's like I think it's supposed to like look or be like a video game or stuff like that. So he's been like crazy lately. You know, he's just been kind of like totally on another wavelength compared to everybody else. And like the Aggro Drift movie is great because it's like I haven't seen it, but when it came out, everyone was like, there were some people that were like, I love it, and there were some people, it had like all kinds of different like reactions from
Mm-hmm.
people, even people that love Kareem, who are love his movies. So I just like that he's like still like kicking and still like making like stuff that for some reason like creates that like response out of people. But I mean, I just think that Julian Donkey Boy is like a beautiful film. It has like a beautiful character. It has beautiful characters and story, very distinct, great moments. Um, yeah, I just I would give it like definitely like an 8 out of 10. But again, I think the movie is like underrated, especially compared to Gummo. I think this movie is as good as Gummo, but Gummo comes up a lot. So I think more
Yeah,
people should talk about it.
completely agree. All right, y'all. You can find everything I do at Austin Lugo.
I'm a Letterboxd at Retro Andrew, R0 Andrew.
And you can find this podcast wherever you have podcasts. You can also find us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. With nothing to say. And thank you all for listening.
Thanks.